Hey guys, welcome back to the Sevenfold Farm Kitchen. Today we are making a dessert that if you Google it, it is going to cost you about $100 if you wanted to order one. Here's the backstory to it. My husband came home from work. He had been listening to the radio, and the DJ on the radio was asking if anybody could make them this dessert for less than $100. I had never heard of it, and so I Googled it, and I was intrigued, and I accepted the challenge of just trying to make one myself, because that's what I do. I get challenged by things that relate to food and see if I can achieve making it myself. So this dessert is called a PIECAKEN. If you haven't heard of it, because I hadn't heard of it, it is the turducken of desserts. You are going to have 2 pies and a cake all in one. It's going to be layered. There are a lot of steps to it, and so we're just going to go through each step. I'm making it for the first time. The thing that I really like about this dessert, though, from what I have researched, is that you can make it to fit whatever your flavor is. So obviously Thanksgiving is upon us. I'm going to be making a Thanksgiving PIECAKEN. It's going to have a bottom layer of pecan pie, and then it's going to have another layer of pumpkin pie, and then on top of that an apple spice cake. So let's jump in, let's get started and get this going. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to core our apple. This is going to be the bottom to start with, but when all is said and done, it's actually going to be the top. And before I go much further than that, I need to get some butter melted. So we don't use a microwave. We melt our stuff in the oven, or we go stove top. So right now, since I know I have some work to do to get this apple sliced up nicely, I'm going to take 3 tablespoons of butter along with 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and I'm going to stick this in the oven to start melting. Okay, now back to the apple. I have cored 1 apple. I am going to cut it in half, and then I'm just going to start slicing it really, really thin. And when I am finished with that, I'm going to lay it ever so beautifully in the bottom of my 9-inch pan. Put my apple in here. I'm not putting it in there very pretty right now because my butter and my brown sugar that are melting in the oven right now are gonna go on top of this. I'm gonna toss this, get the apples all nice and gooey and buttery, and then I will arrange it so that my apples will look pretty, because this will end up being the top layer of the whole PIECAKEN. All right, our butter and our brown sugar is melted. So I am going to give it a good stir, and then I'm going to dump it over the apples that I have in my 9-inch pan and get them completely covered in all of this sugary, buttery goodness. Okay, so I'm going to toss them around just a little bit in there, and then I am going to arrange the apples a little prettier than what they are right now. Then we will put this in our oven at 350 degrees for 10 minutes. We're really just trying to soften the apples a little bit. And there's nothing right or wrong with how you arrange your apples. It's really just whatever you prefer. I will let you know that as I was doing research, I typically like to make everything that I possibly can from scratch. And I was planning out when I was gonna make my pumpkin pie, when I was gonna make my pecan pie and all of that. And knew that it was going to be a 3 or 4 day ordeal to make this PIECAKEN. But in my research, I read that it really doesn't matter taste-wise if you make your own or if you buy the pies. And so that was my out. That was my opportunity to say, you know what? I'm going to cut down on the amount of time that I have to spend in the kitchen. I don't have to do everything from scratch. And so I bought store-bought pies. For the first time in my life, I think, I purchased pies. All right. There we've got some apples. We'll stick some there in the middle. I think that looks lovely. And now we're going to stick that in the oven for 10 minutes. While the apples and the brown sugar are in the oven, we are going to go ahead and make the spice cake to go on top of it. So first we're going to cream together a 1/2 cup of butter, a 1/2 cup of milk, and 1 cup of sugar. And then we're going to get that nice and creamy, and we're going to add in 1½ cups of flour, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, and then some vanilla, and 1½ teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Then we're going to carefully take this batter and put it over the apples, and you want to be gentle as you do this so you don't displace your apples when you're pouring all of that in. And then this whole cake is going to go back in the oven for 20 to 30 minutes at 350 degrees until it is completely done. While that's baking, we're going to work on the buttercream frosting. Now this is an Italian meringue that you start with, and you're going to dissolve your sugar in your egg whites on the stovetop. I have filled that Dutch oven about half full of water, and then we're going to put our egg whites in there and put our sugar in there, and we're going to stir constantly while we're dissolving that sugar so we don't cook our egg whites. I'll be sure to put the description and the recipe and everything down in the comments section so that if you guys feel like you want to tackle this challenge, you can do so as well. Okay, the sugar is completely dissolved in the egg whites, so now it's time to take it off of the burner, out of that warm water, and put it over on the stand mixer again, and we're just going to beat this for about 8 to 10 minutes on high speed until that meringue cools down. Once it's cool, we're going to throw in an entire pound of butter that is cut up. We're just looking for a nice creamy consistency here. A teaspoon of vanilla, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and the recipe says that it calls for a teaspoon of salt. However, I have heard that is way too salty, so we're going to scale back to about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. instead. That icing is not looking beautiful.
Roger, oh no, I'm gonna have to restart. Or I should just do it on this end. Yeah, and then put like a string so you can tie it.
All right, here's my solution. When in doubt, add powdered sugar. So that's what we're gonna do, is add some powdered sugar to what's supposed to be this cinnamon buttercream frosting. Ooh, but it still is not finished. You can tell it's still pretty jiggly there on top, so we're gonna give it some more time. We add powdered sugar. And cross our fingers.
Yeah.
The flavor is good. I'm just a little uncertain about how I'm gonna make this icing stick on the outside of 2 pies and a cake. So I'm gonna keep working on the consistency of it and see. I don't know, maybe it will be okay. It's quite light and fluffy, and that's what we were going for, so maybe powdered sugar was just the missing ingredient. I'm gonna keep working on it, but I don't want to overwork it, because that's one of the things with egg whites and meringue, is that if you overwork it, it turns back into like a liquid again, and that's the last thing I need, because I am not using any more butter. So we'll see. Did you? Oh goodness. I think the thing is you don't want it to be a heavy frosting, because you are dealing with so much sweet in the cake and the pies. We're on to something.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going. Go. Yeah. I think I'm gonna pull it. And now it's gonna sit and cool for a good 20 to 30 minutes. And then we're gonna flip it out. And this is where the top became the bottom, and the bottom becomes the top. And then we're gonna end up layering everything. And it's gonna be a glorious PIECAKEN.
You found any more solutions in your brain?
Not yet. I'm hoping something will come to me. Oh, I have until the cake cools.
Which is how long?
Oh, 20, 30 minutes.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of time to ponder the mystery of the icing.
It doesn't even look...
I know! It looks horrible.
It looks like smashed worms.
How rude. Okay. All right. I may have jumped the gun a little bit on my meringue and my frosting. It doesn't look absolutely amazing, but instead of trying to think about it myself, I Googled it, and it said that if your meringue and your Italian buttercream separates and looks a little bit curdled, like mine did, it just means that your meringue was still too warm when you put your butter in, and that all you had to do was put it in the fridge and let it cool down and then whip it again. So that's what I did. It still isn't what I would say I would love for a meringue, a buttercream meringue, but we're gonna roll with it and not make it any sweeter, because I think we're gonna have a whole lot of sweet going on here. So here's what we're doing. We have our pecan pie, our pumpkin pie, and our apple cake, and we are going to cut around our pecan pie so that we make everything the same size. It works best if these items are cooled, chilled, not room temperature, so that they'll stay a little more stable as you start stacking everything. Everybody will get to snack on the scraps. So if you have children that complain that they're not going to get to eat what you're baking right away, you can let them snack on the scraps. I'm not saying that that is what would happen in our home. My kids would never complain about not getting to eat the goodies. So now that I did that, I'm gonna reach back under here. I'm gonna flip it back over so that we have the pecan pie portion face up and the crust on the bottom. Okay, now we're going to take our lovely Italian meringue buttercream and we're going to do about a 1/2 inch layer on top of our pecan pie. We're going to do a 1/2 inch layer, give or take, of this amazing Italian buttercream. You hear my sarcasm when I said amazing? I don't know. I'm sure it's going to taste wonderful. This is a lesson in the fact that it's what's on the inside that matters, not what's on the outside. All right. What do you think? Is that a good thickness? Is that about a 1/2 inch or should we go thicker?
Looks good to me.
Looks good?
Yep.
Maybe I'll do just one more dollop.
Okay.
Since you said my icing looked like crushed worms. All right, flipping out the pumpkin pie. Just gonna do the same thing with it and trim around with a serrated knife. Without pushing down on your pie. You sure don't want to make that pumpkin squish out. And then again, somebody gets to eat the scraps. And now we'll flip our pumpkin pie over and set it on top of our pecan pie. And another layer of our frosting.
Okay, quite pretty.
It's gonna come together nicely, I think.
And there won't be any icing on top, so no one will be able to see.
But there will be some on the outside.
Oh.
You're supposed to smooth it all in.
Oh.
And pipe it.
Scratch that.
Thank you for your attempt at making it lovely.
You're welcome. I'm excited to see what it looks like on the inside of that. The apples.
The pie, or I mean the cake.
All
right, now that is pretty cool. So we're gonna flip it and cross our fingers. Silpat mat. So some of my apples rose to the top, you can see. But I'm okay with that. I think overall it still looks nice. And we're gonna do the same thing with this, where we're gonna cut it just so on the outside it's the same size. You know, I followed the recipe and did the size of pies that it said to do. However, once you cut off the outside, it makes it pretty small. And if I had it to do over again, I would probably buy bigger pies or make bigger pies just so much of this cake isn't going to be scrapped. But
it won't go to waste.
It won't. That's true. I'm just eyeballing it.
Looks good.
Okay, so with this recipe, you can, with your other icing, you can cover the entire thing with the buttercream, or you can leave the top open so that you can see if your apples turned out prettier than what mine ended up, because I ended up cutting off a lot of the part that I thought was the prettiest. So it's one of those things that I think is fairly forgiving, because you can cover up the imperfections or not. I think that's going to be delicious.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, now I'm going to take the red, well, I don't know that I'm going to make it any shorter. It's fairly level. I'm just going to put it on there. Now, the fun of putting the rest of the Italian buttercream on our PIECAKEN, and then we'll have the finished product. All right.
Yeah, he liked it.
Good. Okay, here we go. We are gonna get to piping.
And seeing you're a professional cake decorator, it should go well for you.
Oh my, yes. We'll see about that. There we have it, $100 dessert. Obviously, I won't be selling mine anytime soon for $100. It was fun to make. I'm glad that I took on the challenge and just thought, hey, let's see what happens. I will make it again. I'm certain of that. There will be some things that I will tweak. The Italian meringue buttercream will probably be the first of those things that I would do differently, or maybe I just need to get better at it. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. We will enjoy eating this, even though it's not the most beautiful thing ever, but we will enjoy eating this PIECAKEN on Thanksgiving. Have a great day. Bye.